Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Now today, mark your calendars, 2034 is when we may find extraterrestrial intelligence. That's according to astronomer Seth Shostak. Now today is your chance to ask him anything you've ever wanted to know about the hunt for alien life. Would you believe it if I told you that we are close to finding aliens? Now, apparently astronomers say that it may actually happen within the next 2 decades. Scientists believe that recent breakthroughs are increasing our chances of finding life outside of Earth. Take a look at this quick explainer.
The Kepler Space Observatory has found hundreds of planets just around nearby stars. And if you extrapolate that data, it looks like there could be 500 billion planets just in our own galaxy. If only 1 in 10,000 has conditions that might support a form of life, that's still 50 million possible life-harboring planets right here in the Milky Way.
Astronomers are scouring those planets for signs that we're not alone, and they're listening to literally millions of frequencies across different star systems. One of those with his finger on the dial is Seth Shostak, and Seth is a senior astronomer at the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence Institute, or SETI for short. It's devoted to studying all aspects of the search for life on other planets. It's great to have you on board here, Seth. Welcome.
Well, thanks very much, Femi. It's a pleasure.
We are going to give you a workout in just a moment, but we can't get the conversation started without our digital producer, Omar Butter, who's standing in for Malika this week. Oh my goodness, what is happening online as far as our online audience wanting to speak to Seth?
Certainly before online, actually, I'm personally incredibly excited about this, and it's nice to see that there's
Don't hog all the time, right,
yes.
Omar? Okay.
We'll try not to.
All right, and we have a hangout as well.
We do have a hangout. In addition to people online, we have actually here joining us via Skype is Eileen Hernandez. She's a geology student in Miami, Florida. In Nairobi, Christopher Kasaon. He's a university student and a member of the Amateur Astronomy Society of Kenya. Now, of course, for those of you who are not in our hangout, don't worry, you can still join this conversation. All you got to do is tweet us using the hashtag AJStream, and we'll get to those tweets during the show.
So, Seth, can you think back to when you were like Christopher's age or Eileen's age? What did you actually want to do with yourself? What were you trying to find out there in space?
Well, actually, I think when I was their age, I was more interested in going into space and finding out things.
Sure.
But for a very long time, shortly thereafter, I was studying galaxies. So these, of course, are the biggest things in the cosmos, and I was simply trying to figure out, you know, how did they spin, where did they come from, stuff like that. And it turned out that doing so clued us into some aspects of the universe that we hadn't suspected. For example, the existence of dark matter, things like that. So it had nothing to do with ET at that point.
Do you think it takes a certain kind of person to spend pretty much their entire career focused on looking at what else might be out there?
Well, I get asked that question, Femi, quite frequently. They say, look, you guys are looking for ET, you haven't found him. And so, you know, how do you look back on your work?
Yeah.
What makes it interesting is that, yes, we haven't succeeded so far. But on the other hand, the experiment is changing all the time. There are always new ideas. There's always new data, for example, about planets around other stars, as we saw in the intro. So this is, you know, it's not a boring job. Let me assure you of that.
Was there one moment, Seth, when you were a youngster, a little boy, where you thought, this is why I'm interested in science? Was there somebody or something that actually got you started?
Yes, there was. And it was the cheesy sci-fi films I was seeing at the local cinema. That's what it was.
Right.
Every weekend we'd go to the movies. And back then they had a lot of films about aliens. They still have a lot of films about aliens. I think they're like cowboys. They're perennially popular. So I think that that's what got me hooked and gets a lot of people hooked on the idea.
And your favorite was what? I mean, I grew up on Star Trek. So I love Star Trek. And your favorite was what when you were a kid?
Well, Star Trek. I was a fan of Star Trek too. But on the other hand, I think that the films, when I was a kid, there were things like The Day the Earth Stood Still or the original War of the Worlds.
These are scary movies, though. They were really scary.
Well, they were aliens with attitudes. I mean, you know, they didn't seem to have much on their mind except to either threaten or try and destroy the Earth. Yeah. Not friendly.
So I know, Christopher, I know that you're interested basically in the same field. Do you want to jump into the conversation here with any question you have for Seth?
Yes, I do.
Go for it.
I'd like to ask Seth, if someone is interested in joining SETI or having a career in SETI, how would one go about it and what qualifications would you need?
Yeah, that's a good question, Christopher. In fact, I get that question in an email probably once a week from somebody because people think that, that's the kind of thing I'd like to do. Look, it's just like becoming an astronomer. You have to study science. Most of the people down the hall here have advanced degrees in either astronomy or physics, or actually the larger part of the staff have degrees in things like computer engineering or computer software, if you will, information technology, that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's the same as just about any other high-level technical job. You know what you have to study.
I am typing in, have a look at my laptop here, the word aliens into Google Images. I'm just going to see what pops up. Basically, some kind of scary beings. I'm going to click on one of them so you can see a little closer. This is obviously from the movie series Aliens. There are people, Seth, who either think that aliens either look like this or they don't exist. Where do you take that conversation when somebody comes up to you and goes, why are you even spending your time doing this? They don't even exist.
Well, my arguments about why they probably exist are a little different from what they might look like. So let's take that first one. Why do I think they exist? Look, we've already heard there are probably 500 billion planets in the Milky Way galaxy. That's our galaxy. And by the way, if you're not happy with our galaxy, we can see 150 billion other galaxies, each with 500 billion planets. So that's an enormous amount of real estate. And to think that there's nobody out there, that all those worlds are sterile, is to say that this planet is extraordinarily special. And one thing you learn in science is when you think you're special, you're probably wrong.
So we have people here online who are talking about the possibility of actually finding these aliens in our lifetimes. We have Raphael here who tweets in saying maybe if they make themselves known, suggesting that they may actually be around but not really revealing themselves to us. But we have Dominic here who says, in my lifetime, I don't think so. We're too busy spending money on war and destruction rather than exploration, but I really hope I'm wrong. Seth, do you think that we're wasting too many resources to actually make decent progress on this in the next couple of decades?
Well, I think that those are two different questions, actually. I mean, you can agree to what we're spending the bulk of our money on or not, but the facts are that the amount of money it takes to look for aliens is the amount that, that Americans spend on tuna fish for their cats every hour. I mean, it isn't a lot of money. So no matter what you may think of what we are spending money on, whether it's for defense or whether it's for helping people who don't have money or whatever it is, that's all enormously greater than the amount of money spent on doing this. So this is a tiny, tiny project, and it isn't really impacted, as they say, by these other expenditures.
So science is a very exact discipline. So if I ask you, Steph, what do you know about the existence of extraterrestrial intelligence right now? What can you tell me?
The answer is we don't know anything about it. Femi, the facts are we have not found any life in space. Whether you're talking intelligent life or whether you're talking about pond scum on Mars, there's no compelling evidence for that yet. I mean, there's some evidence that has been suggested, but most scientists still don't buy it. So what does that mean that we haven't found it? It could mean that it's not out there, but I think what it really means is that we haven't looked carefully enough. It's like arguing in the Middle Ages about whether there might be a continent at the bottom of the Earth.
Sure. Seth, but what then drives you to go to work every day? Just that confidence that you think there has to be something else?
Well, certainly I think that. Of course, what I think doesn't matter in science. What counts is can you prove it?
Sure.
But something to keep in mind, Femi, is that the technology keeps getting faster and better. So what we're doing this year is much better than the stuff we did 3 years ago. So that keeps you going.
So we also have Eileen. Yeah, go ahead, Eileen. I wanted to ask you to jump in. Go for it.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask, do you believe it's possible that extraterrestrial life has already attempted to reach us and we just lack the intelligence to be able to understand it?
Well, that's certainly possible, Eileen. I mean, to begin with, maybe they were sending signals to Earth, 100 million years ago. And there were only dinosaurs around here, and they didn't build any radio receivers, so they didn't get the message. So that's certainly possible, and it's impossible. It's impossible to prove that that didn't happen. Could they be still doing that today? Yeah, they could be. Maybe we're looking at the wrong spot on the radio dial, or maybe we just don't have enough sensitivity. There are 1,000 reasons how you could fail. But on the other hand, you do the experiment because there's at least a chance you might succeed.
Is that a teaspoon you're waving around there, Seth?
It isn't. It's actually
what is that?
It's just a pen.
Okay, I wonder if you're going to do a show and tell science experiment in some way. Okay, yeah. Let me ask you to tell us about the golden record, because that was quite important, something that happened back in the 70s. I'm going to play a little bit of it, but do the introduction first before I play a bit.
All right, well, the golden record, I mean, it sounds impressive. This was just something that we bolted onto the side of the Voyager spacecraft, because we knew that these spacecraft were going to go out through the solar system and into deep space. So we thought, look, maybe somebody will pick this thing up in the deep future. Some aliens, we might as well have a greeting card on it, and that's what it was.
Let me show you a little bit of this greeting card. You can see it here on my laptop. This is the golden record. Go to goldenrecord.org and then you can actually play bits from yourself. This is from the UN Secretary General at the time. Have a listen to this.
As the Secretary General of the United Nations, an organization of 147 member states who represent almost all of the human inhabitants of the planet Earth, I send greetings on behalf of the people of our planet.
There you go. Omar, what do you have?
So we have people who are in our community who are actually asking about what might happen if that interaction with aliens actually did happen, if we did find them. We have Mary here who says, some people will probably start planning the exploitation of the new life and its resources. But we also have Hanif here on Facebook who suggests the opposite. He says, I like Stephen Hawking's statement that we probably should avoid contacting aliens because if aliens visit, it would not be much different than when Columbus landed in America. It didn't turn out so well for Native Americans. Seth, who do you think is more likely to be the bigger danger to the other? Would we be under threat from any possible alien contact that we'd come across, or is it vice versa?
Well, I don't think we can threaten them, can we? I mean, we can't go to the stars. The aliens are presumably on planets around other stars. We can't even go to the nearest star, not in less than 100,000 years. That's a long rocket ride. We're not a threat to them at all. On the other hand, could they come here just because we broadcast into space? You can't rule that out. But if you're going to worry about that, you have to worry about the fact we have been broadcasting television, FM radio, radar, since the Second World War. So those signals are already on their way out there. I have to say that the SETI community doesn't broadcast at all. We don't even have transmitters on our antennas. We're just listening, and there's no danger in that.
Tell us about what you're listening on. What's the equipment like right now? You said how much it had improved over the years. What do you listen on?
Yeah, well, we have a bunch of antennas in Northern California, about 300 miles north of San Francisco. It's called the Allen Telescope Array, because Paul Allen, a famous technologist, actually gave the money to build that. And we have receivers, since we don't, that's a picture of it right there. We have receivers that are able to tune in 60 million channels simultaneously. This is kind of a man's dream, you know. You don't just flip through the channels, you get 60 million all at once. And then we step those 60 million up the dial all the time. So what's really improving is not so much the antenna hardware, because that's big, expensive, and so forth. It's the processing power. It's the computers that are getting built all the time.
So what could you actually hear when you're sitting there listening?
Well, to begin with, you don't sit and listen. 60 million channels, that would take a lot of earphones.
True, right. So how do you process? So it goes to the computer, and then if there's any audio, the computer will tell you, right?
Right, exactly. It wouldn't be very interesting audio, but if there's a signal, computer does.
Okay.
Yep. Eileen, you looked like you wanted to jump in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I have one question. You're very famous for mentioning that that we're going to make contact with extraterrestrials within the next 24 years, or you'll buy us all a cup of coffee. What makes you so confident that SETI will be able to achieve this in 24 years?
Yeah, Eileen, well, you notice I'm only betting you a cup of coffee. I'm not betting you the price of a car. So that may speak a bit to the confidence. But you know where that comes from. What we're doing is improving the speed of the search by improving the equipment. And over the course of the next 24 years, assuming that we get enough money to continue doing this, then we'll be able to check out about 1 million star systems. And my guess is that if you can check out 1 million star systems or more, then you have a decent chance of finding a signal. That's just based on estimates of how many societies might be out there.
I'm just looking at the SETI website here, and if you go along the top, there's a little area here that says donate. I mean, this is really important because you used to be part of NASA and you used to have government funding, and not getting too deeply political here, but you no longer are. How does that affect your work?
Well, it affects it very directly. I mean, if you don't have the money to just keep the equipment going, keep the scientists doing their job, then you can't do very much. And in fact, that's the big problem. This project here at the SETI Institute is entirely funded by private donations. Yeah.
So people watching this and saying, I like Seth, what he's doing is interesting. What would be the rest of your pitch to get the money in, Seth?
Well, only this. Look, you know, we can't guarantee success. But would you have invested, for example, in, I don't know, Columbus's ships? I mean, there was the chance that, even aside from finding a quick way to the Orient, he might find a new continent. There was that possibility. Would that have been a good investment? He might just, you know, sink 500 miles off the coast of Spain.
See, in hindsight, that is a fantastic pitch. But at the time, people just thought he was crazy. He's going to fall off the edge of the earth.
Well, some did. I don't think the people that funded him thought he was going to fall off the edge of the earth.
Right.
Remember, the Greeks had figured out how big the earth was, and they knew it was round. So I don't think they thought that, but they probably didn't think that he would discover a new continent, which would change everything.
Well, Seth, there are people who actually don't want you to get that funding. We have people here online, like Up for School, who says, is basically optimistic that we would find intelligent life outside of our planet, but says it wouldn't matter because billions will still be dying of hunger here at home, and goes on to say, the search for extraterrestrials and this whole space program is crazy. We've only discovered 3% of our own oceans here on Earth. What do you say to skeptics who basically see that there's a lot more that we could be doing with our money here at home than investing it in this?
That's always been true. That's always been true. And that would be a great argument for not funding, for example, Mozart. He didn't cost very much compared to the other things that, for example, they were doing in Austria in 1800, but a little bit of money went to him. And 200 years later, all the problems that they had at the time in Austria, they've all been solved some other way. Mozart endures. There's some things you have to do in order to progress as a society. If you don't do them, you become a very conservative, static society, and those in the end all go away. So there you go.
Sure. Chris, jump in.
Okay, I have a question. With our current technology, because the galaxy and the universe is so big, what is the current percentage of the night sky we can monitor? Maybe we're not monitoring in the right place.
Yeah, I think you might be right, Chris. I mean, when people ask me, why haven't you found anything? I think it's because we haven't pointed the antennas in the right direction at the right frequency for the right length of time. You can actually look at most of the sky. With the Allen telescope array, you can probably look at 60 or 70% of the sky. But the question is, how many star systems have you checked out? How many places where there might be planets with aliens? And that's a very, very small number. That's, you know, a few thousand at most. And you know there are 100 billion stars in our galaxy.
There's something called the alien wow signal. Tell us a little bit about that, and I'll play our audience a little bit as well. Go ahead, Seth.
All right, the wow, well, the wow signal. The wow signal was found in 1977 using a big antenna at the Ohio State University, which is in Columbus, Ohio.
Sure.
And it was just in automatic mode. And one morning, one of the astronomers comes in and he looks at the computer printout, because it was all on paper back then.
Right.
And he sees this big signal, and he writes wow next to it. So it's become famous. But it's never been seen a second time. Even 1 minute later, it wasn't there.
Yeah.
And so you can't say it's science to claim that, well, that was E.T. and, you know, just went on summer vacation after sending us that very...
Yeah, that was our last chance, our first and last chance. Let me just play a little bit of it. It's called the alien wow signal. Have a look at this. So Seth, let's just say you heard that again, or the computer's monitoring and listening heard that again. What could that possibly be?
Well, to begin with, the wow signal was only recorded on paper, so how they turned that into audio, I have no idea. It wouldn't sound like anything, actually.
Right.
But if you heard something like that, you would say, look, that's not telling me very much except this. What it is telling you is that there's somebody out there clever enough to build a radio transmitter, and that's what you're trying to find. The question of the message, are they telling us something interesting about what they look like or what their world's like, that's all secondary. That's what you need to build a different instrument to go find. But it's just finding that first signal that says, you know what, they're on the air.
So we have actually, somebody here was raising a really interesting point, I think. Vineeth here online says, scientific expeditions are crucial to the development of our knowledge and technology for improving our lives. Seth, do you think that this is an argument that you probably could use, in that not just space exploration for the sake of space exploration, but that it could actually be a way to improve that many of the other concerns that people have, which they bring up as arguments against spending money on this?
Yeah, well, to begin with, I want to emphasize again, the total amount spent on SETI amounts to 1 penny per year for each American, for example. Let's just restrict ourselves to the United States. So that's the kind of expenditure you're talking about. You're not going to do a lot in terms of social problems with 1 penny a year. But it's always worthwhile to do basic research, even aside from the possible spin-offs for commercial technology. Somebody did a study once, and it was like 10 years ago, and they found that for every dollar that we spent on NASA, we later got $10 back in terms of technologies that was useful in the commercial sector.
Yeah.
So basic research always pays off. You just gotta be patient. You gotta see the big picture there.
So on May the 21st of this year, Seth came to DC and went to a congressional hearing. Here's a little snippet of what he sat through and how he had a conversation with the lawmakers in the US.
What have we learned so far? We've learned there's a chance that aliens don't like the Beatles, which I have trouble imagining, and they don't like our television programming, and there was a couple of other things. Oh yeah, and Contact is the best movie, right? Somehow I thought that would be funnier.
Seth, I mean, you're really kind here because you're laughing your head off, but I'm just really upset that they weren't taking it very seriously. Is this sort of the downside of your job, that people think it's kind of quite funny that you're looking for extraterrestrial intelligence?
Well, in general, they don't, actually. And I don't even think this congressman thought that it was particularly funny. He was just making an offhand remark based on the fact that it's true. NASA, I think it was in 2008, sent a Beatles song to the North Star, or at least direction of the North Star. So that was what he was referring to. His comment that they didn't like it, I don't know if he knows that. And of course, he doesn't know that. They haven't even received it yet. North Star's 400 light years away. It'll be another 4 centuries before they even get the music. So I think that, in fact, in that hearing, most of the questions were very carefully thought out, showed quite a bit of knowledge about the subject. So, it's easy to pick out something that was a bit funny, but as the guy said himself, it wasn't that funny.
Right, yeah, true. Omar.
So we have here India Nudge Network tweeting at us saying, is there any substance to any of those YouTube videos on aliens? And if so, which ones? Seth, a lot of people just, when they think of search for aliens, they think UFO sightings. Do you think that there is any substance to any of those?
Well, I get emails every day, Omar, from people who are having difficulties with aliens in their personal lives because they seem to have seen something that they interpret as being an alien spacecraft. I don't think that evidence is very good. It certainly hasn't convinced me and hasn't convinced most scientists. I mean, there are a lot of people, 1/3 of the population thinks that the aliens are not only out there, but they're here visiting us. And I think that if that evidence were really very good, you would see it stacked up in the Smithsonian. The idea that the U.S. government could keep it all quiet doesn't make any sense, because that means that every other government has to keep it quiet too. And that's something I simply can't believe.
Seth, we're going to take you to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. I know you love working with young people and education is a big deal for you. What's been the most surprising question you've ever been asked by a youngster?
Somebody said, was I just a mouthpiece for NASA? I thought that was interesting, because if it were true, they owe me a lot of back pay.
Very nice. And also the honesty of young people there. So we're on stream.aljazeera.com. We are taking Seth Shostak. He is the senior astronomer for SETI. So that's the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. If you have a question for him about aliens, extraterrestrial life, no question is too stupid. Although it does have to get through Omar, so he might have to filter a few out, but hashtag AJStream is the way to keep this conversation going. Let me tell you first, though, about our next show. It has been 30 years since a toxic gas leak killed thousands in Bhopal, India, and we'll speak to one survivor who says that the victims of that disaster are still looking for justice. That is a conversation that we will be having on the next AJStream. If you have anything to add to that conversation, the hashtag is the same, hashtag AJStream. Stay with us. The post show is next. Stream.aljazeera.com. We'll see you online. Thanks for watching. Hello again, this is the Stream's online post show. We're carrying on our conversation with senior astronomer Seth Shellstack, who has spent his career searching for extraterrestrial intelligence. Eileen, what did you want to ask Seth?
I am a huge fan of Carl Sagan's work and of the Drake equation. So I actually had a question. He was a big proponent of us being a two-planet species. Do you think that it'll be possible that we will be able to find a planet similar to ours and with a realistic goal of being able to reach it?
Well, Eileen, yeah. I think that we can find other habitats, and I agree with you. I think that we're going to have at least two, and I wouldn't stop at two, by the way. I think the more habitats, the better. I don't think that we have to jump through a wormhole like in Interstellar and go to another galaxy. That seems like overkill to me. But one thing that we can do, we can certainly have some colonies, maybe on the moon, on Mars, those are the obvious candidates. But building, giant space habitats, rotating aluminum cans in space that orbit the Earth, that might be much more practical. And it's something we could do tomorrow if we had some compelling reason to do so. But within 100 years, it will, I think, become compelling, yeah.
So Seth, we put out a fun question actually to our community about if they could communicate with aliens, what message would they send out? We have Elaine here who says, "We are humanity, we are lonely, please come visit." But then we have Judith here with a very different sentiment that says, "Stay away from Earth, it sucks." Which is pretty good actually. So Seth, theoretically, if you could actually make that contact, have you ever thought about what you'd want to say first?
Well, I have, because well, I mean, I don't know that we're ever going to be in communication. We may hear them, but talking back may take a long time. But I think the two questions that I most often think of is, A, do you have music? And B, do you have religion? Those are the two questions I think I would ask the aliens first.
So if I'm trying to piece together what your day actually looks like, if your job involves listening out for extraterrestrial intelligence, evidence of that, and you have computers that actually do that for you, what do you do?
Yeah, I answer email, Femi. That's what I do.
Oh my goodness.
I get tons of email.
Right.
Look, any operation, as you know, you
Sure.
could ask a movie star,
Yeah.
you actually do. The amount of time they spend in front of the camera is actually quite limited. The rest of the time you're preparing or you're developing new projects or whatever. I mean, it's the same.
Right, absolutely.
Christopher, you want to jump in here?
Yeah, I do.
Go for it.
Okay, Seth, I was wondering, is Seth still looking for life in the solar system? Because I read that the planet of the moon Europa has underwater liquid water.
Yeah, actually, Christopher, the scientists, and there are like 60 or 70 of them down the hall from where I'm sitting here, all at the SETI Institute, almost none of them are doing the kind of work that we've been talking about, the kind of work I do, which is SETI, looking for intelligent life. They're looking for life in the solar system. And, there are like a half a dozen other worlds in the solar system that might have life. Mars is one of them, obviously, but also Europa, you mentioned that, Callisto, Ganymede, other moons of Jupiter. There are a couple of moons of Saturn, Titan, Enceladus, that might have giant liquid oceans of something. Okay, so those are all places where you might have life. It'd probably take a microscope to see it, but they're all worried about, could we find life in those places? And that may be where we find life first, actually.
Sure. You mentioned Interstellar. I actually saw that this weekend. Very long film, really fascinating. What was your take on it without giving away the end?
Yeah, well, Interstellar, of course they should have called it Intergalactic, or maybe they should have just called it Interminable.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of long. But yeah, that plot was more convoluted than Latin grammar, really it was. But it was very interesting because it at least addressed some physics that you don't see in movies very often. I mean, how many movies suggest that, well, we'll just drop through this wormhole over here, that kind of thing. So I think that it was very interesting in terms of the ideas. Didn't make a whole lot of sense in many ways, but which films do really.
Sure. All right, Omar.
So Seth, we actually have another question here from Sean that just came in. He says, if you did discover an alien signal, would you be able to tell the public, or is there red tape?
There's no red tape. There's no tape of any color here, actually. Oh, we may have some masking tape. No, look, we a lot of people assume what the suggestion there is, that if we were to find a signal, that the federal government would immediately swoop down on our offices and shut it all down because the public couldn't handle the news. Well, that doesn't even make sense, but we also know it won't happen. We've had false alarms. and you have a false alarm. You're sitting around waiting for somebody to call you up. Nobody cares. Everybody's on their blog saying, hey, we got this signal here. And eventually what happens is the media call up. We had a signal in 1997 that for the first 10 hours, nobody was interested. And then the New York Times started calling me up.
All right, so before I wrap up, Eileen, Christopher, any last questions before I say goodbye to Seth? Your last chance? Are you done?
Christopher?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. Eileen,
yeah,
are you done? Are you done?
Yeah.
All right, very good. All right, so I've just got time to play this. It's called the SETI song. Have you seen the SETI song, Seth?
Neither seen nor heard, as far as I know.
All right, you're in for a treat. This is called the SETI song. We found it on YouTube. Enjoy.
Every morning I grab my donut and coffee and I sit down at my screen. Nothing gets me going like the possibility of knowing there might be an intelligent extraterrestrial message for me. Every day is the same, we don't hear anything, but we like to play Sudoku. Lately we've been into live action role-playing games. We know it's only a matter of time before we finally find intelligent life. Saying hi. Hi. Hello.
Just a matter of time before we find intelligent life. Thank you very much to Seth, to Eileen, to Christopher, and to all of our online community for being part of this show. Thanks, Seth. Good luck.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile, let's move on to the next AJ stream. On Tuesday, it's been 30 years since a toxic gas leak killed thousands in Bhopal, India. And we'll speak to one survivor who says that victims of that disaster are still looking for justice. That conversation coming up on the next AJ stream. Until then, I'll see you online.